Hello everyone, this is my Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 park, Viejo River Park. This is the first park that I created, and I learned a lot as I went on. In this video, I'll start with my overall thoughts on the park, give a tour of the individual areas of the park, and then close with the things that I learned while building it. I hope you enjoy. My main goal with this park was to fill an entire sandbox map. Overall, I accomplished my goal, but I would do things a lot differently if I were to do it again. The main attraction in the park is the Viejo Mountain Falls, which flow into a river and eventually into a lake. I didn't time myself to the completion of the park, but I estimate that it took me around 60 to 70 hours to complete. Most of the time was spent either building roller coasters or landscaping and placing trees or bushes. I built the majority of the landscaping before I built the park sections, with the exception being the southeast part of the map, which I added after I built the Viejo Whirlwind. The first section of the park I built was the mountain with the waterfall. I then sculpted out the river and the lake. Then I added the hills in the center of the park. I added the volcano just to see if I could make it look cool with the particle effects. I think it ended up looking nice and added to the look of the park. There were several revisions to the landscape as I went on. The Viejo Hills section was originally completely different, which I will explain when I show that area. I also originally had a fence around the lake area with differing safari foliage. I changed it to match the aesthetic of the rest of the park. There was also an additional monorail stop east of the Twin Oak Hills that I cut because I couldn't find a good use for the space. I tried putting another riverside resort there, go-karts, a roller coaster, even a nature park / trail, but nothing I did felt right, so I just filled the area with forest. Viejo River Park is essentially divided into 6 sections. They aren't themed in any particular way. Starting from the entrance and going clockwise, they are the entrance and resort area, Viejo Forest North, Viejo Forest South, Viejo Hills, Twin Oak Hills and the Lake Viejo Pier, and Mount Viejo. Each section has at least one custom-built roller coaster to attract peeps to that section of the park. Originally, I was going to run through each of the rides in the order I built them, but I realized that it would probably be better to go in a more logical order, and note the order I built them as I go. We'll start with the monorail. The monorail is a key attraction in the Viejo River Park. It serves as the only function of travel for the peeps to get to different sections of the park. While riding, the peeps can also get a good idea of the various attractions in the park. We get great views of each section of the park as the monorail passes them. My favorite parts of the ride are when the monorail is passing through the center section of the map and when it passes behind Twin Oak Hills. I give away maps for free in the info booths, so peeps will always have them on hand to get around the park. I think the AI in the game isn't the best, but it works well enough. I was surprised with the AI of the game because I closed my park and attractions to get all of the peeps out of the park, and most of them rode the monorail back to the entrance to leave. Based on how they weren't using it very well to get to the rides, I wasn't very confident I would be able to empty the park, but it took way less time than expected. Anyways, I keep the monorail free so peeps can use it to travel without having to spend money they could be spending on the other rides. Overall, I really like the functionality of the monorail. Entrance and Viejo River Resort. I wanted to have a somewhat open entrance to the park to make it easy for guests to get to the monorail and a few other attractions. The entrance square is an okay design. I like the idea of having the concert and enterprise along the river, but the execution wasn't the best. It's an average area compared to other areas in the park. The main attractions available from the entrance are the Green Devil, Flower Launch, and Viejo River Resort. Green Devil. This was the first coaster I built for this park. I hadn't played this game in a long time, so I was trying to experiment with a coaster type I hadn't used before. There isn't much to say about this coaster, as I didn't integrate it very well into the terrain. I also made 2 design errors that I didn't anticipate, which were that I built it on the ground, and I built it too close to the edge of the map. I built most of the other coasters in the park off the ground to accommodate more space and decorative elements, in addition to giving the coasters a higher altitude to start from. When closing out this coaster, it kind of meanders back to the station with a series of sloped curves combined with breaks. I had to accommodate for the position of the coaster in relation to the edge of the map. Had this not been the first coaster I built, I would have likely deleted it and started over. I actually did do that multiple times later on to other coasters. Also, I named it after the boss from Mega Man. Flower Launch. There isn't much to say about this one. I'm pretty sure this is the only coaster I didn't custom build. I took some saved design, recolored it, and gave it a new name. I added the flowers, water, and trees along the side for flavor. The idea was to have a coaster launch into the air and give guests a nice view of the park from the top. This coaster was originally located near the entrance to the park, but I didn't like the placement and eventually changed it to where it currently is. I think it's fine. I didn't custom build it, so I don't have a very strong opinion about it. It's obviously a very simple design. Viejo River Resort. This isn't a coaster, but I intended this to be one of the reasons peeps visit the park. A relatively simple pool complex with twin hotels adds a nice feeling of realism to the setting. When the monorail goes over the center of the map, you can see the peeps swimming in the pools below, which is so cool to me. I built the custom hotels because I wanted to try making a building in the game, which I had never done before. I think they turned out pretty good. I also like the fact that the resort is set next to the river. Mount Viejo. This was, I think, the first area I worked on, and it shows. It's a very claustrophobic area with a monorail station located next to the waterfall on a raised platform. A ramp leads down to the main attraction of the area, which is the junior coaster Ladybug. My favorite part of this section is the dam building that Ladybug runs through to get back to the station. I had to build this dam here so I could have an open canoe ride in the lake, which I will show later. A highlight of this area is obviously the waterfall from Mount Viejo. I didn't want to touch it after I created it because I was afraid of messing it up, so it looks a little off-center. I still think it looks pretty striking, and you can get a good view of it from the monorail, along with other areas of the park. This whole section was supposed to be the centerpiece to the park originally, but it didn't really work out that way. Ladybug. The second coaster I built for this park. I wanted to have a kids section of the park with its own kids roller coaster. It turned out a little more intense than I intended, and the kids' idea kind of fell apart. Overall, I think this roller coaster is okay. It's a short, inoffensive coaster. I like that it kind of interfaces with the Green Devil, and how it travels through the dam to go back to the station. Viejo Forest North. I really like this section a lot. When the monorail goes over this section, it really looks like it's in the middle of a forest, which is exactly the vibe I was going for. I like the openness of the area, and there are some great coasters in this area as well. Viejo Forest Flight and Volcano Rush. Viejo Forest Flight. There's a lot to like about this ride in my opinion. First, there are a lot of great views on this ride. Second, I really like how this ride really feels like you're flying over and through the forest. Third, I like how the ride goes around the flower launch. If it's timed right, guests will be launched up that ride as you fly by them. I originally had a different roller coaster here, which I demolished to build this one instead. I'm glad I did because this is one of my favorite coasters. The biggest issue with this ride is the same issue a few of my other rides have, which is a poor ending. This one doesn't have as bad of an ending as Green Devil, but it's still not the best. I believe this was the 5th coaster I designed. Volcano Rush. This was the third roller coaster that I built, and the first roller coaster I built that really took advantage of the terrain in the middle. I love the view from the chain hill, but the showstopper here, in my opinion, is the inverted drop right next to the volcano. Really, it's the namesake of the ride. I also love how Viejo Whirlwind comes up right next to the very first bank on this ride. The weakest section of the coaster is the double helix section. I feel that I didn't really know what I wanted, so I just ended up spamming some helixes and calling it good. This coaster also has a decent ending, unlike Green Devil or Viejo Forest Flight. This was the third coaster I built for the park. I would say this coaster is above average. Viejo Forest South. A lot of what I said that I liked about Viejo Forest North is true here as well. One thing that I really like about this section is the brick pizzeria that I built. I intend to do more custom buildings in my future parks. I also like the observation tower here. It gives you a good view of the ride to the top. There is one coaster in this section, which is the Giga Coaster Gigant. Gigant. This coaster is named after an enemy unit in an old RTS game called Urban Assault. I would be surprised if anyone who ever watches this video knows what I'm talking about. The colors for this coaster and cars are from the game. I wanted to have a coaster that went up a mountain and down the other side. This is one of the fastest and smoothest coasters in the park. Once again, I have a coaster that I don't really know how to end, so it ends up being a little mediocre overall. My favorite parts are the big banking turns that are taken at high speed. My least favorite part is the helixes. I really need to stop using those because I clearly don't know what I'm doing. Gigant was the 6th coaster I built. Viejo Hills. Viejo Hills was originally a pair of slightly different sized plateaus located in the southeast area of the map. I had an elevator go up to the first plateau and a walkway to the second, taller and bigger one. There was even a waterfall on the second plateau, but I didn't really like how it was turning out, so I scrapped it for the current look. A thing I've learned doing this park is that it's better to use too much space than too little. Both Viejo Hills and Mount Viejo were problematic when it came to the usage of space, and both are, coincidentally, the weakest areas in the park. I do like the secluded feel to the area, and I also like the coaster here as well, the Viejo Whirlwind. Viejo Whirlwind. Definitely one of the better coasters in the park. The ride offers great views throughout the experience and starts with a strong drop and banking turn opposite of Volcano Rush's similar turn. Through a series of exciting loops and turns, it careens into the forest along a stretch of water into, you guessed it, more helixes. There's a hidden pond in that area that at least gives it some good scenery. The ending of this ride isn't the worst. I liked the idea of a chain hill bringing the car back to the station, so I did that. I think it worked well and gives the ride a unique feel. I would probably like it more if I didn't just notice how many helixes I used on these coasters. Yikes. Viejo Whirlwind was the 7th coaster I built. Twin Oaks Hill, one of my favorite areas in the park. The park at the base of Twin Oak Hills is a great area. There is a nice water fountain centerpiece with plenty of benches around. If this park existed in real life, I would probably spend a lot of time in this area. There is a small trail that goes up the hill to the cabin, which doesn't serve a purpose but looks nice. There are a few awesome attractions here as well, 2 coasters and the canoe company. There's a pier connected to the park, featuring a giant Ferris wheel, a mini golf course, and the canoe rental company. It seemed like a cool idea when I built the pier, but I'm not exactly sure about it now. I think that buildings would really improve the look of this area. You can get a good view of the southern section of Viejo River Park from the top of the Ferris wheel. Viejo Twister. I believe this was the 4th coaster I built for the park. There are some cool elements to this ride, but it suffers from a poor ending. I really like how intense the ride is in the beginning. Fast loops, corkscrews, helixes keep the adrenaline high for the beginning. I also love how the previous car will cross paths with your car near the middle of the ride. Then it comes back for one loop and immediately goes back to the station. Like I said, it has a poor and abrupt ending. This ride has some of the best views of the park though, and it makes good use of the terrain, so it has redeemed a bit for me. Lake Viejo Sprint. It may not look like it, but I think I spent more time on this coaster than any other coaster in the park. It's a wholly intense experience, with 3 different sections where you are accelerating upside down to high speeds. Not for the faint of heart. I modeled the inverted drop kind of after the Cannibal at Lagoon in Utah. If you've ever been there, you know what I mean. If you don't know what I mean, I'm sure you could find pictures on Google. This was the last coaster I built for the park, and overall I think it turned out okay. My favorite part is when it goes over Twin Oaks Hill into the inverted drop. My least favorite part is, once again, the ending, because it kind of just meanders aimlessly back to the station. Lake Viejo Canoe Company. One of the original ideas for this park was to have a lake with a canoe ride on it. If you don't make an actual track for the ride, then the peeps will take the canoes out to different parts of the lake. It's a cool idea, but I feel that I didn't really take full advantage of the idea here. I think it would have turned out better if I had put the lake in a more central position as to give a better view while canoeing, along with adding buildings on the pier. My overall thoughts on the park are that I like some of the things I did, but I would change a lot of things if I were to do it again. Regardless of that, though, I'm just happy that I set a goal to make a park that filled out the map, and by that definition, I accomplished my goal. That's really cool to me. Out of all of the sections, I think I like Viejo Forest North and South and Twin Oak Hills the most. The other sections of the park are a little underwhelming in my opinion, especially Mount Viejo, the pier, and Viejo Hills. In general, I really like the landscaping and scenery in the park. I spent a lot of time tinkering with the tools and learning how they work so I could make it just right and fix any issues with the terrain. I think I've learned a few main things from this experience. First, and most importantly, landscaping and foliage adds a whole other layer to the game. Second, I learned that buildings are important. If I can build custom buildings for the majority of the shops and rides, it will add a lot to the experience. I could even feature a coaster that goes around and into structures. The few buildings I did do really help sell the immersion in the areas where they are located. Third, giving yourself more area to work with in the different sections gives a lot more freedom when designing park spaces. All sections in the park that were spatially challenged ended up being the worst areas by far. Fourth, I should focus on custom coaster designs. They are far more interesting than placing thrill rides and such. Most of the preset rides I used feel out of place. For example, the concert, enterprise, circus, etc. don't add anything to the experience other than to fill out space. I would rather spend the time creating custom coasters or landscaping. I really need to improve my custom coasters as well. All of my coasters suffer from one bad design or another, so I need a lot more practice. I think that's all I have for you today. I'm really excited to show off what I learned in my future parks. I've already finished another one and I'm working on a third. Maybe I'll make more videos on them in the future. If you would like to see more, please subscribe. I hope you all have a nice day. Thanks for watching.